Good morning. Just because it's my birthday, I'm going to ask for a really loud good morning. So, good morning. Hey, thanks. So, as a person who, looks 67 but is turning 37, I appreciate that. Friends, as we wrap up our sermon series this week and next week, this time that we spend looking at worship, what we've said this whole time is our hope is that as we look at the shape of our worship, how we form our worship, that it would in turn shape us into the worshipers that God is calling us to be. And today, as we celebrate Stewardship Sunday, looking at how we steward the gifts that God's given us, we'll be looking at giving as an act of worship. Giving that God doesn't need anything that we might offer to Him, but we'll see that how giving helps us draw near to God in our need for Him. So friends, hear the word of the Lord, taken from Psalm 50, beginning in verse 7. Listen, my people, and I will speak. I will testify against you, Israel. I am God, your God. I bring no charges against you concerning your sacrifices or concerning your burnt offerings, which are ever before me. I have no need of a bull from your stall or of goats from your pens, for every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains and the insects in the fields are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Sacrifice thank offerings to God. Fulfill your vows to the Most High. Call on me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you will honor me. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You see, talking about giving, I remember 3 years ago, I think, maybe it was 2 years ago, I had my very first sermon, and I blurted out something very honest that I was nervous preaching a talk about giving. And some of you might be equally nervous to receive a talk about giving. But we're going to get through this together because giving is so much more than what we make of it. It's so much more. To some, giving might seem like an old habit. It's just something you've done, something you always do. For others, it might be a sense of responsibility, a duty. And for others, it might be more of a chore. But giving is so much more, friends. Our giving, our offering to God, is an act of worship. It is an act of worship. It helps us do 3 things. Giving helps us trust God. Giving helps us thank God. And lastly, giving helps us join God. Trusting God, thanking God, and joining God. And today, just as a side note, we are going to specifically explore about what it means to give of our resources, our finances, but that by no means is the only way that we give back to God. And any of the things that we just discussed about giving, that it helps us thank God and trust God and join God, could be equally applied to how we give our time or our talents. But the first thing we need to establish is that giving helps us trust God. And if you look at what we just read in Psalm 50, God says to his people, we're not having this discussion right now. I'm not having to come down on you because you aren't making an offering. It's because you are making all the right offerings with all the wrong hearts. He says, I bring no charges against you concerning your sacrifices, concerning your offerings. They are ever before me. God's saying, it's not that you haven't brought me an offering. It's not that you haven't given. But what God is most concerned about, it seems to him that we tend to think that when we bring something to God, it means that God needs something. And that's not the case. Verse 9 says, I have no need of a bull, of your stall, or goats from your pens. The animals in the forests, cattle in the hills, they're all mine. Verse 12, it says, if I were hungry, you're bringing all these animals to me. If I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you, because I have enough to eat. You're making all the right offerings with all the wrong hearts. Because you think that giving God something is to help him, when really your act of giving is to help you, to help us. The psalmist is saying, you must have forgotten who God is if you really think that what you have is really yours in the first place, when really everything you have is God's already. And even as I say that, I know that if we were to really press into this, that all the things that we have aren't ours, that a lot of us bristle against that. Because especially now, especially here, a popular concept is that all we have, we earned. It's ours by right. And we will do with it what we please. That's the common mantra of today. But think about it. Is that really true? Everything that you have, did you really earn it? Friends, who gave you, or who gives you, the breath that allows you to wake up in the morning and earn the paycheck? Who gave you or gives you the skills to work with your hands? Who gave you the hands? Who gave you or gives you the wisdom to work with your mind if you don't work with your hands primarily? And who gave you that mind? We have a lot to learn from Job. Job, if you've read his story before, Job loses absolutely everything within a few verses. He loses his children, his property, his reputation. It's all gone in an instant, after just a few messengers tell him that he's lost everything. And yet, just one or two verses later, he says in Job 1:20, it says, at this Job got up, after hearing that he had lost all he had. It says, Job got up and fell to the ground in worship. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Job knew that never mind his barns, never mind his cattle, never mind his sheep, Never mind his reputation. He knew that everything he had, even his own children, he knew everything he had were not because of his doing. All of it belonged to God, and it was God's to do with what he will. Job knew that none of this was his. Do you know the same? Or when you look at your bank account or your 401k or your home or your cars, is all that's on your mind is, I earned this? All the things we are tempted to say are ours are not ours. We don't own any of it. It is God's and God's alone. Every inch, every penny, every breath. God says in the psalm, "You think you're putting food on my table. You think that giving is to provide for me." No, friends, giving is an act of trust. That when God asks for everything that is his to go back to him, when he asks for everything, it is trusting not that we are able to provide for God and his kingdom, but that God is providing for us and will continue to do so. Do you know that? Friends, every time we give to God, whether it's an hour or a dollar or in whatever form, every time we give to God, it is a declaration that God is trustworthy, that our hour or our resources were in better hands than how we would have spent it. We are saying, God, we trust that you don't need us to provide for you, but by letting go of all these things, we trust you will provide for us again and again. Giving helps us trust God, that he'll provide for us, but giving also helps us thank God. God is trying to, in this psalm, reestablish the right heart of giving. He says, you've been making all the right offerings just with the wrong hearts. Let me help you reshape why and how you give. And he says, now that you know that I don't need you to provide for me, how should we think of your giving then? You should think of your giving as a thank offering. Verse 14 says, you know what you should do? Sacrifice thank offerings to God. God is inviting us, in response to all the ways that he's loved us, to take all the things that he's given us that aren't ours, to offer them back to him and just say, thank you. Thank you for even the moment that I got to steward, to be a trustee of all the riches of your grace. Our giving is an act of worship, and our giving is an act of thanks. It's one tool, one way that we say thank you to God for all he's done. And think about what that means. It means that giving is not about what you do. It's not about making you feel better. It's not about helping us feel like good people. It's not about earning God's good grace, as if he'll be swayed by one bill or another. And it is certainly not so that others can see how generous we are. No, giving is not about what we do. It is a reflection in gratitude of what God has done. When you think of Jesus, who do you see? What do you see? Do you see God poured out for you? Philippians 2 said he was emptied for you. Everything that he had absolute right to, his privilege, his right of being glorified, enthroned forever. Everything that he had access to, he gave up for you. To hang on a cross for you. To lose his own independence, to be bleeding and broken for you. Friends, God withheld nothing in declaring his love for you, not even his own Son. There was no cost too great. And so when we make our offering back to God, we are simply saying, God, take it all. Who would we be? What would we be saying if we were not willing to give back everything to God, all of our hours, our talents, our treasures? If God has truly laid it all on the table for you, who are we to withhold something back from him? Our offering is saying, God, take it all. Take whatever you want. Take my body and all of its strength. Take my mind and all my thoughts. Take my soul and all of my worship. Take my time, all my hours. Take everything I have, all my treasures. Take whatever you want, because everything I might give to you will never compare with everything you've given to me. Friends, when you give, it is so much more than a mechanical act or a mere responsibility or a chore. It's more than a habit. It has to be. It is the way that we say thank you to God by giving over all that we have, all of who we are, our whole lives, because he withheld not even his life in saying, I love you to us. We give as an act of thanksgiving. We look at all the things we have and we offer it back to God, singing all the while with all of our hearts. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Be thou mine inheritance, now and always. Be thou and thou only the first in my heart. O high King of heaven, my treasure thou art. Friends, giving helps us trust God, that he doesn't need us to provide for him, but he's providing for us and will continue to do so. Giving helps us thank God, offering all that we have as a way of saying thank you for everything that God has done for us. But lastly, giving helps us join God in building his kingdom here on earth for the renewal of all things for his glory. We have the privilege, not the right, but the privilege of working alongside him. And whenever I've thought about this idea, that one day God will set every wrong right, that he'll make all things new, the one thing that has always stuck in my mind and bothered me is that, why doesn't God just snap his fingers and do it all himself? Because certainly he could. So why not just snap his fingers and make it all happen? Why involve us? Why does God insist on using average, if not below average, doubting people like me? Broken vessels. Why does he insist on using us to build his kingdom? The answer cannot be that he needs our help, because we've already said God doesn't need us. He doesn't need anything. The answer can't be that the church will somehow crumble if we don't take care of it. Not if we really trust, as Scripture says, that the church is Christ's bride, his dearly beloved. How will we love the church more than he loves the church? No, the church will not crumble because we are not making an offering. If God doesn't need our offering to build his kingdom, and he doesn't need our offering to take care of the church, giving is simply our way of saying, God, I see all the things you're doing, and I want in. I want in. I trust you. I trust that you're going to take care of me. No matter what you ask of me, I trust that you're going to provide for me. And all of my gifts I give as a way of saying thank you for all the things that you've done for me, having withheld nothing for yourself in order for you to say how much you love me. And now we see all the things that God is doing to begin to renew the world, beginning with us, and we say, God, I want in. I want to be a part of that. I don't want to be on the sideline. I don't want to be uninvested. I want to be all in for what God's doing around me. I want to be a part of what you're doing. God, use all that I have, all my time, talents, and treasures. I want to invest in your kingdom. I want to see people released from the bondage of sin. I want to see the whole world reached with the gospel. I want to see the hypothetical about how the people on one lonely island haven't yet heard about Jesus. I want that to die as a hypothetical, because every single person has heard about Jesus. I want to see nations, not just people, turned back to God. I want to see my life turned back to God, and I, as your pastor, I yearn to see your lives turned back to God in all ways. Friends, God is building a kingdom, and when we give back to God all the things that are his to begin with, all we're doing is saying, God, I want in. You've given me the privilege of being a part of it. I'm all in. Friends, giving is a privilege where we say, I trust you, I thank you, and I want to join you, Jesus, in all you're doing. Take all that we have. Use it all for your kingdom and not ours. Friends, let's pray together.